Uh, Good morning, His Excellency Minister Hisham Tawfiq, Minister of Public Enterprises, His Excellency Tobias Kraus, Deputy Head of EU Mission in Cairo, Dr. Ahmed Mehena, First Under Secretary of Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy for Research, Planning, and Authorities Follow-up. Respected speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Our project support to the technical and financial sustainability of renewable energy and energy efficiency sector is an EU-supported project in cooperation with both the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources in Egypt. The project is executed by a consortium of consultants led by DAI Human Dynamics, including, in addition to Human Dynamics, Tractable Energy and Lamar International. The project consists of 5 components for reorganization of the core function of the new and renewable energy authority, modernization of renewable energy framework, establishment of energy modeling unit for the update of the energy strategy of Egypt, establishment of Cairo Sustainable Energy Information Center, and technical assistance to energy efficiency and climate unit at the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources. The topics and services packages which has been offered or being offered so far by the project reached 42 activities. It's our pleasure to hold the 11th webinar, which is a part of our communication plan regarding energy transition. The today webinar is about sustainable mobility for Egypt. This webinar is honored to be attended and provided keynote speeches by His Excellency Minister Hisham Tawfiq, Minister of Public Enterprises in Egypt, His Excellency Mr. Tobias Kraus, Deputy Head of EU Mission in Cairo, and Dr. Ahmed Mehena, First Under Secretary of Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy for Research, Planning, and Authorities Follow-up. It's my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Tobias Kraus to provide his welcome and opening speech. Mr. Kraus?
Shukran. Can you hear me?
Yes.
معالي الوزير هشام توفيق، عزيزي الدكتور أحمد مهينة، السادة المشاركين، باسم وفد الاتحاد الأوروبي لدى مصر أود أن أعرب عن خالص التحيات والشكر لمشاركتكم في هذه الندوة التي ستتناول مستقبل النقل المستدام في مصر وبشكل خاص النقل الكهربائي. Allow me to continue in English. So I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you very much for your hospitality, even though it is a virtual one, but I hope that we will get a chance to meet in person again very soon. So I would like to start by saying a few words about the European Green Deal, which is a very prominent topic in Europe and beyond. As you know, already before the COVID pandemic, the European Green Deal was one of the top priorities for the European Union, and this is the case even more so now, and it will be the case in the future. As you know, it aims to make the EU climate neutral by 2050. And we can, of course, not do this alone, and we cannot do it without our neighbors. So we are very eager to team up with all of you. Sustainable mobility, including e-mobility, is an important topic of such cooperation. And it has an important growth potential as well, provided that there are also investments in the development of smart grids, intelligent electricity distribution systems, and the success of electric vehicles deployment is very closely linked to smart grid development, since the charging infrastructure is a precondition for large-scale use of electric vehicles. Allow me to provide some data about the European Union. There are some 200,000 public charging points in the EU today, serving around 1.6 million electric vehicles, which is a considerable achievement, but far from enough. To achieve our Green Deal target of reducing transport emissions by 90% by 2050, we will virtually need all cars, vans, buses, and heavy-duty vehicles in the EU to be emissions-free by then. So we need a comprehensive network of recharging and refueling infrastructure covering our continent. In the shorter term, our aim is to get at least 30 million zero-emission vehicles on EU roads by 2030. We have set ourselves the target of installing 1 million charging points by 2025 and 500 hydrogen refueling points by 2030. Increasing the number of charging points, it is not the only challenge we will be facing. For instance, we need to ensure that our electricity grid is also up to the task. There are also demand-side issues that need tackling, such as transparency of pricing for consumers and facilitating seamless cross-border payments. We need to work on the interoperability of charging infrastructure and services for all types of vehicles so that car and truck owners can travel longer distances without the constant worry of finding compatible and efficient charging solutions. Obviously, such upgrading of our infrastructure comes with a certain price tag. Egypt is already taking important strides towards the implementation of a sustainable transport system throughout the country. The installation of large numbers of modern, reliable, and green urban transport and railway projects is an illustration of these efforts. Such topics were also addressed during high-level visits from the European Union by European Union officials recently. So you may have seen that the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans, was in Cairo in early October, and he personally visited the Maspero metro station, EU-funded, jointly with high-level Egyptian officials and the European Investment Bank, to highlight the importance of green transportation and of EU-Egypt cooperation in this area. Also, the European Commission, the European Commissioner for Neighborhood and Enlargement, Oliver Varhelyi, was in Cairo until this very morning, and also during his visit, these topics were very much at the forefront. Egypt is obviously a frontrunner in the region and has announced a number of initiatives, such as the use of electric buses in a number of governorates. Egypt plans to manufacture electric cars in 2022, and the first 100 are expected to be produced already by mid next year. And about 3,000 charging stations are planned to be installed in the long term. The government of Egypt is preparing an e-mobility strategy, and we are very eager to learn more details about that strategy in the course of this session. At the same time, the effect of this e-mobility strategy on the existing energy market will also need to be understood and scoped. And increasing the share of electric vehicles in major metropolitan cities, such as Cairo and Alexandria, and on major highways, may be constrained by the capacity of the energy sector and could require additional investments in energy generation in the long run. So looking ahead, just to recall that the EU has been providing support to energy and transport projects in Egypt, covering a wide array of subsectors, including generation of green energy, strengthening the transmission grid, good governance of the energy and transport sectors through the development of strategies, the creation of regulatory agencies needed for the market structure, the Cairo Metro, and other projects. In the framework of our multi-annual planning, covering the period until 2027, we will be working with Egypt very closely on a number of Team Europe initiatives in the areas of transport, energy, digitalization, and on water. Aspects, climate and sustainability will have more weight and will be cornerstones in all of our initiatives in line with the European Green Deal that I mentioned. Other green infrastructure projects that will be covered by our cooperation include urban transport projects, logistics centers, electricity transmission control centers, and numerous capacity building programs. In the field of e-mobility, smart grids will be the backbone of the future energy system. It is an important field of cooperation with Egypt, and we can work on the interoperability between electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure covering hardware and information exchange protocols, of course also offering to take stock of the European experience in this context. In closing, e-mobility must be at the heart of the green cooperation and recovery, as it will help deliver economic growth, future-proof jobs, and climate benefits. We very much commend Egypt for its important activities nationally and internationally, for example, in the context of COP26 and 27, and are eager to continue our close cooperation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kraus, for the shedding light on Egypt-EU cooperation in many aspects, including specifically energy and transportation. Also, I think maybe His Excellency may confirm later that Egypt is planning to invite COP27 to be in Egypt, and we hope this will come out of COP26, which will take place next week. Ministry of Electricity is playing a key role in the shift towards sustainable transportation. Main components of this transition is the electrification of both road and rail transportation. Responsibilities of Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy is not limited to enabling electricity, but it also includes increasing the share of renewable energy in the electricity supply, such as that electrification being combined with zero emission. It's my pleasure to invite Dr. Ahmed Mohena to shed light on the plans of Ministry of Electricity in this respect. Dr. Ahmed Mohena.
Thank you, Dr. Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh jami'an. His Excellency Mr. Hisham Tawfiq, Minister for Public Enterprise Sector, His Excellency Mr. Tobias Kraus, Deputy Head of EU Delegation in Egypt, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I have the pleasure to be with you today. I would like to express my deep gratitude to EU Delegation to Egypt for organizing this important event to share ideas and experiences about sustainable mobility in Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, the Earth is experiencing extraordinary scale of extreme weather events, such as heat waves, floods, wildfires, and pandemics. It is a clear warning and message. So we should act now to move into a low carbon future as pledged in the Paris Agreement. These are drivers which lead us to energy transition, which will require changing in the form of production and the consumption of electricity. The global energy transition is more than a simple transformation of the energy sector. It is multidimensional. It is multi-dimensional transition and is evolving in terms of technologies, socio-economics, institutional drivers, and forms of finance. The energy transition will be enabled by significant reduction in costs of produced energy from renewable and increase the capacity factor, evolution in the electrical and energy storage technologies, encouraging the use of electric mobility, policy framework, and market instruments, increasing private sector participation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, from long time ago, Egyptian electricity sector has started its transition to low carbon electricity resources. It relies basically in exploiting renewable energy resources and contribute significantly to improving energy efficiency, securing electric supply, and reducing emissions. The Integrated Sustainable Energy Strategy for 2035 was prepared in cooperation with EU, and I would like here to thank and appreciate the role of EU in supporting Egypt to prepare this strategy. This strategy was approved by the Cabinet in 2016, in which the share of the renewable energy in the energy mix will reach 42% by 2035. By the end of this year, we will achieve 1 year ahead of the schedule our first target by reaching renewable energy capacities to 20% from the expected maximum peak load. Now we are reviewing and updating the strategy by excluding the coal and replacing its capacity with renewable energy sources. In this context, Egypt is rich in renewable energy resources, especially wind and solar, that qualify it to be one of the major renewable energy producers. There is about 7,650 kilometers square have been allocated for implementing renewable energy projects with expected potential of 35 gigawatts from wind energy and 55 gigawatts from solar energy. To achieve our ambitious vision in utilizing the renewable energy resources, a lot of procedures has been taken and incentives offered to encourage private sector participation in the energy sector projects. The private investment will play a major role in achieving our target. The most important step was legislative amendment that has done to encourage private sector to invest in power sector projects, especially renewable energy. In addition, we started with tariff reform program. Also the government has adopted a feed-in tariff program which succeeded to attract 32 international and local investors to implement Pemban solar park projects, the largest one in the Middle East and Africa, located in one place, in Aswan, with total capacity 1,465 megawatts. The project won the best project prize worldwide by the World Bank. As a result of these actions, a great number of investors became confident in the Egyptian electricity sector. Foreign and domestic investors have been encouraged to invest in the sector projects. The latest price we got under the BOO scheme are less than $2 per kilowatt hour for solar and less than $3 per kilowatt hour for wind. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, recently we are working in different technologies that will help us in our energy transition, as waste to energy, hydrogen, smart grids, water desalination using renewable energy, and energy storage. In addition to that, e-mobility, whereas the Egyptian government is exerting great efforts to localize electric vehicles technology by supporting and encouraging consumers to use the new environmentally friendly mobilization methods to keep back with the global shift towards clean energy. In this regard, a lot of measures have been taken to develop electric vehicles in Egypt, such as Egyptian government was coordinating with many strategic partners like World Bank, EBRD, and GIZ in order to develop a complete overview of applying e-mobility as a milestone for achieving sustainable transportation. And we already finished these comprehensive studies and have around figures about the impacts on the Egyptian utility grid with different electric vehicles penetration scenarios and possible policies and strategies to promote e-mobility and manage the impact on the power sector. Also, the Ministry of Electricity is participating in the National Committee from different ministers headed by the Egyptian Ministry of Military Production for the localization of the electric vehicles industry in Egypt. Also, nowadays, Egyptera is working to provide technical specification and safety rules for the electric vehicles charging stations, also to provide the types and the forms of the contracts between charging station, how to evaluate their performance technically and financially, especially for medium and large scale companies. Also, an incentive tariff has been proposed for electric vehicles charging, and it is currently in the process of approval. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the global changes confirm that Any country alone cannot face the new challenges and cannot secure its own energy sources. So there is a need to increase the cooperation among all countries and regional pools through technology transfer, exchange experiences, and enhancing regional markets. Finally, I am confident that our gathering today in this event will greatly help to enhance the cooperation and shed a light on the most recent challenges and potentials in e-mobility, with the aim of future collaborations to achieve clean energy transition. I wish you a successful meeting and constructive discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mehena, for these continuous efforts and pursuing the mission of electricity sector in all directions, which will be not limited to improve the sustainability of the transportation sector, but it goes beyond to the sustainability of our economy in general. Now, we come to our present to you today. Minister Hisham Tawfiq is a true visionary reformer. Although the main mission of Ministry of Public Enterprises is to help the public companies to be more competitive and financially stronger, yet his vision goes beyond that. It includes shifting to green business. The pioneer restructuring process of Al Nasr Automotive Company, which was suffering from bankruptcy, includes introducing new product to the market, which is electric vehicle. This reform will not just be limited to restructuring industrial company, but it goes beyond to introduce market shift through enabling an affordable electric car to the market, which will accelerate the efforts towards sustainable transportation sector. His vision was not limited to that. It also includes coordinate activities and provide support to the service providers to enable charging stations. This plan includes, in the first phase, 3,000 charging outlets over the coming 3 years. Also, he coordinates activity to support transformation of taxi in Egypt to be electrified. I know that His Excellency is one of the stronger supporters of renewable energy. I believe shifting public companies to rely on renewable energy is one of his plans. Please, His Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Salmawi, though you left me nothing to add, but I will try. Excellency, Tobias Kraus, Dr. Mehena, dear attendees, first I would like to thank the EU for inviting me to give a speech. And it will be a very brief speech. I will start with throwing light on the steps taken by the Egyptian government towards putting in place the foundation for an EV industry. One is a financial aid for the passenger cars. According to international standards, the government has agreed to give a cash rebate of $3,000 per vehicle for the buyer, which is very generous. As Dr. Salmawi said and Mr. Tobias, so we finished last week a survey for we are intending to put in place public charging stations, basically AC stations. And we're starting with 3,000 posts, which means 6,000 concurrent charging cars. And the plan now is to put it in 18 months, rather 3 years. 18 months seems reasonable. So this is done, and we are finalizing the final selection. We have in preliminary we have spotted 36,000 places or locations to start implementing the first 3,000. Electricity price, like Dr. Mohina said, we have worked very closely with the Ministry of Electricity to discuss the fair and incentivizing prices for both the electricity that will be provided to the charging stations, the public charging stations, and the limits for the pricing of the charging fees. As you know, if we leave it to the private sector, they might, at the first wave, they might increase the fee unnecessarily, and which would be really against the project. So we discussed with the private sector, in tandem with the private sector, and we reached a very reasonable charging fees for the which will be annually adjusted. So this is already approved by the Egyptian cabinet, and I think it's a matter of time to announce it. We are forming with the private sector as well as the public sector. So this is a triple P project for establishing the company which will do the first 3,000 dual charger posts. The private sector will operate and manage the network. Now we're moving to actually the Nasr company, which is a company belonging to or managed by the ministry. The company was formed in 1960 and produced 384,000 vehicles over 50 years before it was closed down. We are reopening the company, and we decided that the strategy for the production is to go green, exclusively green. So we're not going to produce any ICE car, and by car I mean passenger cars as well as commercial vehicles. We have on the ground, we are developing the first commercial vehicle. We have it. It will be in the next fair that's going to be for the transport. I think it is November. So we will have the car there. The car is we are developing it to have two versions. One is a CNG dedicated powertrain, and the other is electric powertrain. And this is in conjunction with an Egyptian research company, applied research company. The company is well known to Europe. It is already providing services since 6 or 7 years to the European automotive industry, especially the French one. And we have signed a contract with them. And we are looking very eagerly to develop the EV. By EV car, I mean the battery and the software, the ECU, to be able to reach the local components of the vehicles, the commercial vehicles, to above 85%. We are looking very eager to achieve this step. We have announced earlier that we are revamping the NASCO plant with regards to passenger cars to put in place a capacity of 25,000 cars per annum. for one shift, a 10-hour shift, which means the actual production capacity would be 50,000 cars a year. This is, of course, too much for the local market. So our plan would be to start growing regionally when we achieve our objective of having local components of 85% for the electric cars. By commercial, I mean we're starting with a 14 passenger bus to the full 50 passenger buses for intercity, and we have around 6 models that we will produce. I think for the passenger cars only, we are the 25,000 cars. Our target production for the local market is going to save around 112,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions. This is good for a start, and I'm sure that within a decade that we would be helping a lot the Egyptian society with green vehicles. I hope I gave you enough data, and I'm really looking forward to meet with you in the coming fair to show you our products. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this very promising effort. Although we usually have the Q&A session at the end of the webinar, yet, if you allow me, I would like to seize this opportunity to open the floor for questions from the floor for 5 minutes to get maximum of this opportunity with Minister Hisham Tawfiq. You have a Q&A tab at your screen, so please pose your questions. We already have a question to His Excellency regarding scooters and electric bikes. Actually, the question was primarily about the custom duties of scooters and electric bikes. But I might switch the question to ask His Excellency, is there a plan to extend the electrification to include this kind of transportation like scooters and electric bikes? You told us that you are planning to produce, in addition to private car, buses. Is there a plan to go for 2 wheels kind of vehicles?
This is a must, but I preferred to take it a step later. I mean, scooters and motorcycles are more important actually than passenger cars. The numbers are huge, and they are a big player in the market. Concerning the incentives, we started with the passenger cars, but I'm sure that in the near future, once everything is put in place, we'll reopen the subject for the scooters and the motorcycles, both on the subsidy side as well as the production side.
We have another question about buses. Usually the Nasr company was one of the major suppliers of public buses to Cairo Transportation Department. Is there kind of an arrangement? Your Excellency told us there is plan to produce 14 passenger buses. Is there a plan to have a joint project with Cairo Transportation Department to be electrified using local manufactured buses?
We prefer to see ourselves as suppliers at an arm's length from the clients. So we started, the mandate for the company is to first produce the product and then go and market it. I'm sure that there are a few competitors, and we have to compete with them at level ground competition. So we first produce the car, and then, or the bus, sorry, and then we go and market it both to the private sector and to the very important one client, the public transport authority.
Very nice that His Excellency support free competition in the market, although he represents one major supplier in the market. There is a question about, we might looking for more extending the line. Is there a plan to shift the industry itself, public enterprises themselves, to use top solar roof systems, for example, for energy supplies, to manage the cost of electricity to their facilities?
Well, this is a very sensitive issue and political issue. We started, rather than solar roof, we had a big project for the biggest consumer of electricity in Egypt, which is the aluminum smelter in Upper Egypt. And very honestly, for some time to come, there is an excess capacity in the grid, in the national grid, and we have to use it before we go to the net metering arrangement at a big scale. But there is a very good improvement in allowing the private sector to install, I would say, smaller size of PV stations, and by smaller I mean less than 500 kilowatt hour capacities. It is being I mean, I have a company which is in this area, and we are seeing more business coming. So at least for the smaller companies, it is coming back. Now, for the public enterprise, we have much more challenging issues than the PV at the moment. So let us again focus on priorities. We are trying to fix the companies, and then I'm sure that the PV will come.
There is a question also about a taxi initiative. All of us remember the White Taxi Initiative back, which really helped in improving the taxi service in Egypt. Is the ministry involved in an initiative for converting taxis to electricity with other entities in the state through soft loaning these taxis and making financial mechanisms support this initiative?
Sorry, that you reminded me that the gentleman who put the question reminded me to add one more incentive that was given by the government, which is the financing. So the financing, it's a very generous financing scheme with the long maturity of the loan, and as well as very reasonable interest rates. This is the green initiative already announced by the government for the CNG hybrid initiative for both taxis as well as passenger cars. It is extended to the EV program, and actually it is better than the initiative done for the CNG, because for the passenger cars, you don't have to exchange an old one for a new one. So anybody buying a new EV car would get both the financing as well as the cash rebate. The taxes, we intend for the taxes, as well as the other commercial transportation like Uber or Careem or what have you. Our target is to sell half of our cars this sector. So this is a very important sector for us. We are talking with Uber as well as the taxi association to make sure that they will have appetite for our EV.
It seems, Your Excellency, there is many customers now for the e-cars produced by Nasser. They ask about the prices of the cars.
We have chosen the mid-size car. By mid-size, I mean the economic scale. It's a 5-passenger, a wheelbase of around 2.6 to 2.7 meters, to a hard car. And the price to the client will be a little bit north of 320,000 pounds. This is net of the subsidy. So for the plant, it means that they will get 370,000 Egyptian pounds for the car.
Very competitive.
But this is a very good heavy-duty car, which will have a battery of 50 to 60 kilowatt hour. It will have an NEC range of 400 kilometers. We have tested, by the way, the car, and it did better in the city. We recorded 460 kilometers for the full charge, and for outside of the city, it recorded 340 kilometers, which is not bad as well. Around the last thing, the engine is around, the motor is around 150 horsepower.
Very competitive performance and specifications. Actually, we have many questions, but unfortunately, because time limitation, I would like to thank Your Excellency very much for shedding light on this effort, and appreciate if your schedule can allow to be with us in the webinar, as we will have very interesting presentations from our experienced speakers.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sure. Ladies and gentlemen, sustainable transportation is not just fuel switching towards clean energy supply. It necessitates that energy sector be able to enable renewable energy, either in the form of green electricity and maybe green hydrogen. Furthermore, e-fuels can be a part of this shift. Sustainability of transportation sector goes even beyond that. It includes, in addition to greening this sector, improving its efficiency and capacity in transporting both goods and passengers, shifting towards more efficient transportation, such as high-speed electric trains, is a target to benefit from their energy efficiency and high transportation capacity. Having an affordable cost to passenger and transportation of goods are targets. Digitalization of the transport sector will play a key role in modernizing this sector and move towards sustainability. Furthermore, sustainability of the transport sector means the sector should be more secure, reliable, and comfortable. More than that, it should be inclusive, and no one should be left behind. And transportation service should be available for all, including remote areas, as well as be suitable to any person with disability. Our speaker today will shed light on many of these dimensions. We are lucky today to have this group of distinguished speakers. We will have Q&A session after the end of the presentations. Please use your Q&A tab at your screen to forward questions. Please mention whom the question is being directed to. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to invite Engineer Said Metwalli, head of the Transport Regulatory Authority in Greater Cairo, where he will speak to us on Egypt's sustainable mobility strategy. Engineer Metwalli has over 30 years of experience in transportation sector. He has BSc degree in highway engineering and master degree from Cairo University. He is a CEO of Greater Cairo Transport Regulatory Authority since 2014. Also, he is a member of the technical office of the National Council for Road Safety. Engineer Metwalli.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so sorry. مهندس سيد جاله ميعاد مع معالي وزير النقل دلوقتي فمعلش هو مش هيقدر يكمل معانا الميتنج. I am Engineer Hanan from Land Transport Regulatory Authority. I will join you instead of Engineer Syed. I am working in the new organization. It's the Land Transport Regulatory Authority, LTRA. This is a new organization responsible for organize and supervise international and international land transport services. Engineer Syed responsible for, by the way, Engineer Syed, he is a CEO of this new organization. Okay. If we speak about the Egypt's sustainable mobility strategies and the green strategies, we need to focus on the infrastructure projects because infrastructure projects is more sustainable. We all around, we can look around us. We working on the logistic areas around Egypt, and everybody know about the new network, national road network, built new cities and modern cities, and improve the level of services providing to the civilizations. If we speak about the transportation projects in this, okay, okay, there's no problem. Okay. If you talk about the transportation projects in Egypt, we work on the develop a public transportation and providing civilized and environmental friendly means of transportation, like electrical buses, like PRT, CNG buses working in the new administrative capital. Also, we using natural gases as an alternative fuel for vehicles. We go through expanding the use of the electric vehicles around Egypt, especially in the public transportation sector. And also, we are planning and implementing a group of transportation technologies projects in Egypt. Because we know and understand the information is very important key, and PIS or ITS, this project is technologies, new technologies, and very, very important in the future. I don't want to speak a lot about the PRT system, and if you can meet another meeting with Engineer Zaid to talk more, he will be better than me if we speak about the PRT system or PRT projects. But also we in LTRA we are platform.
Engineer Hanan, you are using two connection. Please mute one of them because there is a noise coming on. Just one of them, also, please. The one you watch, which you are.
Yes, yes. These are, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for it.
Are this connection?
Yes, okay, you have right. Connections. Please mute one of them.
I muted another one.
Mute the speaker.
Okay.
Okay. Please go.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you. Don't worry. In LTRA, as I mentioned, is a new organization, we have a planning to work in many fields, like new projects will be it will be a very good project for Egypt and sustainable in a modern approach. I mentioned just a PRT system. And that's all. I'm sorry, I'm not prepared myself for this meeting before. It's nice to meet you, and I am ready to, if I can answer any question from your side. Okay, thank you.
Hanan, okay, sorry, good, it was muted. Thank you very much, Engineer Hanan, for this overview for ongoing activity for the transportation sector in Egypt. Sure, there will be questions. I appreciate by the end of our webinar, we will going to have a Q&A session, and we give opportunity to our participants to forward questions regarding Egypt's strategy for transportation. Our second speaker is Engineer Ahmed Mahmoud, Vice Chairman of EGAS, holding company for natural gas, where he will talk to us about the car conversion to gas initiative. Engineer Mahmoud has 30 years of experience in the gas sector. This includes Egypt Gas Company for natural gas distribution, Car Gas Company for the compressed natural gas, car fueling stations, and car conversion to natural gas. Also, he worked as a chairman of the Jordanian Egyptian Fajr Company, which works in the field of natural gas transmission lines and electrical power station gas supply. He participated in many natural gas projects, technical and economic studies for natural gas supply, and contributed in promoting the gas sector in Jordan and leveraging Egyptian Fajr Company in Egypt. He had several training courses in the gas sector applications inside and outside Egypt. He graduated from the Faculty of Engineering at Ain Shams University. He holds a postgraduate diploma in engineering project management from the American University in Cairo. Engineer Mahmoud, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Salmawi, for the great introduction. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Their Excellencies, Mr. Sham, Mr. Tobias Kraus. I will share a very short presentation about what we are doing in the CNG sector. I hope once this is shared, please allow me, tell me, because I will start directly.
Already it's shared. It's a share now.
Okay. So our presentation will be about the expansion plan to convert from gasoline to CNG in Egypt. We will discuss together the importance of compressed natural gas, the application and usage of CNG in Egypt, governmental initiative to motivate using CNG as an automated fuel from 2017 till now, presidential initiative for expanding the usage of CNG, also CNG marketing plans in Egypt. Actually, the CNG usage is an act of compliance with the governmental plan to convert using alternative fuels as a green, safe, clean fuel, taking advantage of the CNGs or the natural gas large quantities available in Egypt and using it as a sustainable resource of energy. If we just look at the share of the CNG compared to the consumption of natural gas in Egypt, it is around 3 to 4% from the daily consumption of the other sectors in Egypt. So this means that we have a secure fuel of natural gas that we should use and expand our usage in all applications that we can use. Also reducing the dependence on liquid fuels and providing financial aid to the market spread, as we depend on importing some liquid fuels, and also gas is available in Egypt through our huge natural gas network grid in Egypt, which is around 60,000 kilometers of gas pipelines all over all the governorates in Egypt. Also benefiting from the CNG lower price compared to the price of liquid fuels. We are depending on promoting the CNG in the market as a safe and environmental and economic fuel. We will just overview the history. We launched the CNG business in Egypt in 1993, starting with the establishment of the first refueling station at Balain Petroleum Company. As we are usually trying to make all the experimental part inside the petroleum sector in Egypt, we started with the fleet of Balain Petroleum Company, and we established the first station. And after 2 years of implementing this CNG inside the gas fields in Egypt successfully, we started the first 2 specialized companies, Cargas and Gastec, which were established in 1995 and 1996. Since this early start till now, the number of CNG gas stations has currently reached 492 stations. We're about to reach 500 stations. It included 163 stations during the last financial year, 2020-2021. And this was the highest rate since the start of the activity. By the end of September 2021, the total sum of cars converted to gas have reached 387,000 cars. Last year, only in the last year, we converted 51,000 cars were converted within the financial year 2020-2021. These 51,000 cars is equivalent or added to us that we reduced the CO2 emission with 140,000 tons of CO2 in this year. And this was a great achievement, as only the portion of this year, as you see, is 1/8 of what was converted since 1995 till now. There was a spike increase in CNG refueling station, as we started with 6 stations in 1996. Now we have, in the end of financial year 2021, 464. There are 120 conversion centers to convert vehicles from gasoline or diesel to use biofuel, gasoline and CNG. Total sales of CNG reached until now 8.7 billion cubic meters since the usage of CNG in 1996. Second slide will show you the history of the CNG application in Egypt. Once we started this, in 1995, it's an old experience actually in Egypt, but it was not well taken care of in the beginning, and after the great expansion of the first launch, we start facing decrease in conversion and in station expansion and in gas sales generally. And the chart in front of you is showing to you the number of converted cars since 2008 up to 2015 and 16. We were converting in this year 18,000. Maximum number reached in this period was 24,000 vehicles, until it decreases to 6,000 vehicles per year in 16-17. Actually, this when the petroleum ministry took care of the whole idea of it and start taking care of the project as an alternative fuel to gasoline. We first started by liberating the prices of all liquid and gas fuels, and then the next slides will tell you what was our plan. But the result is in front of us here. Since 17-18, we started again the growth of the conversion vehicles. We reached, after the price liberation, 32,000 vehicles per year in 18-19. And now, last year, we reached 51,000 vehicles. And also, this was shown in the gas sales, which were in the highest range, 500 million cubic meter. Now we have reached 750 million cubic meter. Of course, every natural gas cubic meter is equivalent for 1 liter of gasoline. So this means that we reduce the dependence on gasoline for 750,000 liter per annum using CNG instead of gasoline. How we achieved this? Actually, this was a success story for the Petroleum Ministry, started by fuel price liberation. We started to liberate the prices, taking care that always natural gas as an available source transported in pipelines is a better low price fuel. And we were focusing that prices of natural gas never exceed 45 to 50% from the alternative fuel, either it was diesel or gasoline, which already was a very good initiative for the people to start again converting their cars. We benefited also from the expansion in the roads all over Egypt, all the highways and all the small compounds around capitals, either in Cairo or Alex or Giza governorates. People now tendency is to live outside Cairo, and this also is encouraging them to go to CNG as a lower fuel price, environmental friendly and safe, and will affect their economics, of course, after they are using now their vehicles for long distances from their places outside the capitals to their workplaces. Also, we facilitated the payment method. So we added a simple contracting procedure for the client, only with his ID and something to make sure the place of the residential place for him just to be proven. And we make the contract with him. Also, installment without down payment or interest for 1 year. This was very good support for the customers. And also instant gifts upon cash payment. Funding transfer, we worked on funding transfer for the kids from either self-financing from companies operating in the activity, or cooperation with Small Enterprises Development Authority, or cooperation with the Development and Agriculture Credit Bank. We actually focused on the saving, and we here put an example for 10-liter consumption per day. I am not trying to market the conversion for the attendees, of course, but this actually is the case. We faced here that 10-liter consumption per day for a private car, you will find the return is very obvious. Period for the private car to return the cost of conversion is from 6 months to 1 year maximum, which is an infinity IRR for any project. So this chart is showing you the saving compared to the gasoline octane 80 or gasoline octane 92. You are saving 975 pounds per month, or 1,350 in case of gasoline 92. In 1 month, you save this amount. In 3 months, you save the other amount. Finally, in 6 months, you save, if you are using gasoline octane 92, 8,100 pounds, which is the cost of the conversion kit. Of course, if you are using 5 liters per day, you will divide this by 2, and then you will get your investment in 1 month. This is only for private cars, which is the lowest consumer for gas for us. Taxi and Uber and Careem cars, they consume minimum 15 liters per day. Microbuses, they consume from 20 to 40 liter per day, which will tell you, of course, how benefitable is this project to the economy and to the citizen himself, as this is a direct service from the petroleum sector, from the gas fields until the gas is reached to his own vehicle, and he's making a saving and an effective saving for 6 months. After this saving is going to him as an earning or a benefit from transferring from conversion from natural gas to gasoline, from gasoline to natural gas. Also, we joined the governmental vehicles conversion project. We assigned 103 governmental entities to gas tech company with a total of around 3,000 vehicles. 1,187 vehicles has been converted already. 79 government entities with a total of 3,200 vehicles was assigned to Cargas company. 1,360 vehicles has been converted already. And we had a total of 2,547 vehicles converted until September 2021. Old car replacement initiative. This was the initiative coming from the ministry cabinet, and after this we will see the effect of the presidential initiative in this matter. Total initiative targets the number of vehicles over 20 years which were fabricated from more than 20 years is 1.4 million vehicle, 1.3 million private cars, 147,000 taxis. The target is to replace 250,000 vehicles within 3 years at a rate of 70,000 in the initial stage, 90,000 for each the second and third stage. The total that was converted until now is almost about 8,000 vehicles. Of course, this is the first year for the initiative, so we're still waiting, and we are converting any type of vehicle manufactured from using CNG to be using CNG and gasoline, and we are cooperating with all the stakeholders in this. For the assignment of the President of Egypt on July 2020, His Excellency, the President of Egypt, Egyptian President, launched an initiative to expand the use of CNG as an alternative fuel for cars due to its economics, environmentally friendly, and social returns, to reduce the consumption of liquid fuels and preserve public health and the environment. The Petroleum Ministry has benefited from the support of Go Green presidential initiative in achieving its strategies in increasing CNG stations along the country by coordination with all the stakeholders and authorities to facilitate the license and registration procedures. Of course, without the help of all authorities and the government support and the presidential support in this matter, we were not able to reach 163 stations to be built in such a period, starting from the initiative of His Excellency the President. We had lots of communication with all authorities. Everybody was supporting us. Even the photo here shows the President, His Excellency the President himself, looking to one of the presidential fleet converted with CNG, and which gives us all the support in the construction of the stations and for all stakeholders to start converting their own cars, and also to be a very great support for the initiative of replacement of all cars which had been manufactured from more than 20 years to be replaced with CNG bi-fuel cars. How we did the speeding up for the application of the governmental plan? We developed a plan to expand the establishment of conventional natural gas in petrol and diesel stations. We were simply showing all authorities and government entities that we are not building new stations. We are using existing old petrol and diesel station, and we are adding only a new type of fuel, which is CNG. So this is just to facilitate the idea for everybody. We depended on our public sector companies, COP, الجمعية التعاونية, and Mr. Petroleum, مصر البترول, our companies owned by the petroleum sectors. And this also was the start, but we also elongated our business, and we started to work with national service project organizations like وطنية and Chill Out, and with private companies like ExxonMobil, Total, Petromin, Oil Libya, and others. This already saved a lot of time and effort, and also made the project more economic, as we already used an existing land against fees or rental payment to the landowner, either it is a company, public or a national or a private company. The idea was great. The presidential support convinced everybody that this is a new future for us. We were targeting only the station to serve passenger cars in the beginning and small trucks and microbuses, which we know, of course, that will not be addressed by hydrogen fuel in the future. Hydrogen fuel, as the expansion, will mainly target the buses and the ships and planes and trains and big trucks and big vehicles, which is not our case now. We have our gas, and we want to depend on the supplying a sustainable fuel to the passenger car. We severely before faced some shortage in importing liquid fuels, which affected a lot our economics. Now, with a key performance, a very clear key performance indicator for our project that we are replacing every day. We convert a car, every 1 single cubic meter of gas is replacing 1 liter of gasoline that will not be imported to Egypt. This is our target. We are working on it very fast, and already solving the chicken and egg dilemma. Either we build the station and wait for the market to expand of vehicle conversion, or we start converting cars and then build the station to cover their demand in gas. This was solved. Decision was taken in Egypt. We started construction of the stations. Now we are ahead for the conversion, and we are telling everybody that CNG is now available in all the governorates. And next slide will show you more what is going to be used. Also, we started new ideas out of the box, which was not before used, using advanced equipment and high technology with a very small size to be able to fit in the old petroleum sector diesel stations. And also we invented new modern designs by placing the compressor and the equipment of CNG above the canopy, which already saved lots of areas. We added more cost to the canopy structure itself, but we saved lots of places, and this is already made us or gave us the ability to cover the 300 stations that we are now operating more in the last year. Also dealing with all international suppliers, about 14 international suppliers for CNG station equipment. We were trying to buy 1,000 or compression station. So this will not be we will not be able to fit in this using our old suppliers. So this is why we expanded our supplier shortlist. As we see now, our plan and the presidential assignment for us for the petroleum sector is to reach the number of 1,000 CNG stations covering all the governorates in Egypt. We started with 206 before the initiative, the presidential initiative. We are planning to build 794 stations. Our plan is to cover all the governorates. We started this plan. We have lack in 4 governorates. Now only we have Marsa Matruh and all the 26 governorates, even El Wadi Al Jadid, are covered now with CNG services. As the slide is showing to you, what we started with 206 stations. What we are going to reach more is 794. All over the governorates, what is the number already opened from the plan? As we see, we opened 48 stations in Cairo, 20 in Alex, 27 in Giza, 18 in Qalyubiyah. All the governorates now has new stations, and unless the governorate already has a bigger number of stations before and does not need now, so we did not open this year for them, but we have in our plan to expand the number, of course. As you see, I am sharing with you all the information we have. We think that we have a success story here in Egypt, that we already now reached from this number almost 500. So we in the middle of our plan. We are expecting to be able to achieve the assignment from His Excellency the President and reach the 1,000 station and be able to convert more than 50,000 vehicles per year. We are actually planning to have from 60 to 70,000 car per year to be converted, in parallel with covering the conversion required for the government plan to replace the vehicles which were fabricated from more than 20 years and comply with the government plans. Finally, as we have been constructing the stations, some of the governorates were having crowded areas because of the CNG. We wanted to erase this bad idea about having problems in fueling, and we're trying to convince the customer now that CNG is available everywhere. So we are focusing now on building stations and also to meet the increasing in demand fastly in some governorates. We have implemented the MRU, Mobile Refueling Unit. The first MRU is in use by Gastech, in addition to 10 MRU to be delivered soon to Gastech as car gas. These stations, they will solve the problem of if we don't have for locations that are far from gas lines and difficult to connect due to a cost or geographical nature, can be used also as a partial reinforcement in the event of stopping the station for heavy overhauls. Of course, we have our station as a compression station. It's depending on equipments, compressors and electrical or gas-driven motors. So we always face a heavy overhaul for our station. So also this station will be as a replacement for the station instead of having a crowded area in the governorates because of us. Now, with these 10 stations coming soon and the one acting actually in the Alexandria-Cairo Desert Road, we will cover all these areas and solve the problem of stopping. And also it can be used for feeding industrial and commercial construction, which are difficult to be connected to gas network for economical reason. We already started this in El Wadi Al Jadid. We are feeding the El Wadi Al Jadid now. Instead of constructing a pipeline with a cost of 2 billion Egyptian pound, we are now transferring CNG from our station in Asyut to El Wadi Al Jadid, and El Wadi Al Jadid now has got 5,000 residential customer and 180 car working with CNG. Sorry for my long presentation. I was trying to share my the petroleum sector and the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources success story in this. And I hope I was not too much long for you. Thank you. The floor is yours, Dr. Salman.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ahmed Mahmoud, for very informative presentation. Actually, conversion to natural gas is a kind of low emission technology, but also as a side results of this program, you notified us about the finance program, the government program, the old car conversion program, replacing old cars, the mobile refueling unit initiative, and building stations. According to CAPMAS, the total number of gasoline stations in the country is 3,700. You're talking now about 1,000 gas fueling station, which means that you are targeting 25% almost of the market to be converted into natural gas, which is very good and an ambitious target. Sure, the mechanism which has been developed could be benefited from other kind of initiative, like converting car to electric car. Our third speaker is Dr. Reda Ragab, assistant professor at Zagazig University in Egypt, to speak about projection of the e-mobility for private cars and taxi till 2030. Dr. Ragab is assistant professor at the Mechanical Power Engineering Department, Zagazig University. He has his PhD in mechanical engineering from University of New Orleans, Louisiana, United States. He worked as a postdoctoral research associate at Louisiana State University, University of Memphis, and University of New Orleans from 2014 to 2017. He's a senior consultant in the energy efficiency, auditing, and renewable energy fields, and delivering training courses in energy efficiency at Ministry of Petroleum for its capacity building program. He participated in research projects on renewable energy, electrification of transport sector, and energy efficiency. He is an active in research areas of renewable energy, energy efficiency, gas turbine cooling, computational fluid dynamics, and turbo machines. Dr. Ragab, the floor is yours, but I appreciate if we could restrict ourselves to 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Hafiz, for your introduction. Here I'm starting to share my screen. Please let me know if you see the presentation already.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce the work that is projection for e-mobility for private cars and taxis till 2030. The work actually is done by a team led by Professor Hafiz Salmawi himself at Zagazig University, and myself and some other colleagues, Dr. Ragab Khas and Dr. Mohammed Ismail. The outline of the presentation will be an introduction and of the study, and I'm going to talk about the total cost of ownership model that we developed to calculate the penetration ratio of the market share of electric vehicles on the market. I'm going to talk about the various scenarios that EVs in the market. I'm going to display some sample of results. And finally, I'm ending with some actions that should be adopted by the stakeholders to motivate and help the takeover of electric vehicles in the market. First of all, I'm going to say that by 2017 statistics, we have 4.8 million passenger cars and 380,000 taxis. And these are representing around 42% of the total vehicles, registered vehicles in Egypt. And I'm going to say also the transport sector in Egypt is the second consumer of consumption, with 60% of that amount is from gasoline. Transport sector also is the second producer of emissions, with around 18.5%, totaling 38 million tons CO2. The petroleum product imports were around $3.5 billion by that year. And finally, I'm going to end the slide in the statistics with some kind of the installed capacity on the electricity grid, because we're going to introduce the electric vehicles to the market. So we want to make sure that this amount of electricity, or this amount of energy provided for the electric car is available in the in the national grid. So the installed capacity were around 59.5 gigawatt installed capacity, and the energy generated in 2019-2020 were around 197 terawatt hours, with 23 terawatt hours from renewable sources. That's from the holding company report 1920. Okay, so this is a brief introduction about the mobility market in Egypt, the transport sector, and to show some kind of the problem of that huge consumption of oil products and also the huge production of the emissions. Here it comes the outcomes of electrification. So once we switch to electric vehicles, we are expecting to increase definitely to increase the gross development product, and also we are reducing the emissions because we're going to shift from gasoline vehicles and diesel vehicles to electric vehicles. So the emissions will be limited only to the electricity generation. And we know that the renewable energy share in Egypt is increasing much these days. So the emissions will be much, much reduced because we're going to use electricity majorly from clean sources. Also, from the benefits of electrification of the transport sector, we can allow for more share of renewable energy to be penetrated into the grid, because we know that the electricity, the renewable energy will be with sufficient amount, but penetrating it with great percentage in the grid may have some kind of problem if there is no good planning for that. So using electricity to electrify, to drive the electric vehicles will allow for more share of renewable energy in the electricity mix. Finally, using the electric vehicles may open the opportunity for what we call vehicle to grid and smart station, smart charging. The vehicle to grid, because the electric vehicles batteries itself is looked at as a storage, a dynamic storage. So all the energy stored in the electric battery, if it is well managed, it can serve for ancillary services for the grid, because we store energy during the day from renewable sources in these batteries. And if it is well managed and the charging is well optimized, we can use this energy stored in the batteries later on during the peak hours, what we call vehicle to grid services. So here is some kind of snapshot of the road transport market in Egypt. We have passenger cars, which is developed into 5 categories, like category A, category B, category C, SUV A, SUV B. We have taxis, we have 3-wheelers, motorcycles, buses, and trucks. The buses, we have a different kind of buses, urban buses, minibuses, and coach and school buses. And the trucks are long-haul trucks, lorries, and small trucks. We're going to show in this slide, I'm going to show the scope of this current study itself. So looking for the trucks itself, it's very unlikely to be electrified in the near future because due to some kind of technological constraint from the e-vehicles, because of the high mileage and the low mileage and the high range of these kind of trucks. So it's very unlikely to be electrified in the current situation, but it's very eligible for hydrogen or green methane or green methanol product using. So that's maybe another plan. So it's not going to be covered in our study. What we're going to cover in our study is the passenger cars and the taxis, because they are very eligible for that. They currently represent around 55% of all registered vehicles in Egypt. Also, these 2 categories are responsible for around 90% of gasoline consumption. So electrifying these 2 categories will definitely save good amount of gasoline. And also, if we save that gasoline and switch to electricity, we will definitely achieve economical and environmental impact because of the reduction of the emission, because the emission will be limited only to the electricity generation, which is very low, by the way, because of the penetration of the renewable energy. This is first part. And also because currently the electricity generation in Egypt is based on 85% natural gas, which is less pollutant fuel than the gasoline and other products. So we expect the economic and the environmental impact will be very significant. And also electrification of these 2 categories specifically are very challenging because it requires a lot of policies and efforts from the government and financial entities and institutions, stakeholders, electricity company to convince the customers to switch their car to electric vehicles. And that's a good task. And we're going to talk about these kind of policies and incentives at the end of the presentation as kind of messages to these stakeholders to allow and to help for the takeover of the electric vehicle transformation. So this will be the scope of the current study. And for the buses, it's going to be an extension for the study because its electrification is much easier because it works in fleets and mostly short range inside cities. And this can be easily done by convincing the fleet holders just to convert them. So we're not going to take it in our study, but already included for the study expansion. So the scope of the study will be the passenger cars and taxis, as I mentioned before. So the methodology of the project, of the projection toward the EV, is kind of based on what's called total cost of ownership, because we know that the EV market in Egypt, or the car market in Egypt, is not very huge, and it's actually price driven. So once you get a reasonable price for the customer, and once you get the infrastructure for EVs, he will think and significantly consider the changing from the gasoline or conventional vehicles to the electric vehicle. So the model is based on what we call total cost of ownership. This is the life cost, which includes both investment, CapEx costs, and OpEx costs over the lifetime of the vehicle. These things may be displayed, maybe we can summarize the model itself in this drawing on the right-hand side of the slide. We have, this is what's called the TCO of the gasoline vehicles, because that's the market right now. We calculate the total cost of ownership of these gasoline vehicles, and we calculate the total cost of ownership for electric vehicles. And the total cost of ownership will include some. The good about the model that we use for calculation of the TCO is that we considered some parameters stochastically. That this is a very good point about the model, that initial purchase price of the car, the annual mileage of electric vehicles, and the consumption of the electric vehicles, these things are not very well known because it's a new technology. So treating it as a stochastic parameters will give some kind of realistic projection of the situation. Other parameters like costs, or costs like maintenance costs, registration fees, taxes, fuel prices, electricity prices, are treated deterministically with their historical pre-known values because they are, and also there are some kind of escalation with time based on the situation. So the third factor in the model was called degree of saturation, which we called the number of added saturation charging units divided by the units required for the market saturation. So the charging station actually, and we mean by the DC quick charging station, are very important, is a very important factor in the EV market evolution, because customers will not buy electric cars without seeing the sufficient infrastructure, especially the charging station for their cars. So what we do is to calculate the gasoline market, the total cost of ownership of gasoline cars, and we notice that this TCO is increasing with time because of the policies and the implementation and the cost of the prices of the fuel. All these things tend to make the total cost of ownership of gasoline cars increase with time over the years. The total cost of electric vehicles decrease with time due to the policies that will be followed by the government, and also due to the technology improvement and the scale of production that will definitely reduce the EV, as also was mentioned by His Excellency, Dr. Hisham Tawfiq, about the manufacturing of the Nasr's car E70. This car also is included in our study, and its price is very competitive. So once it enters the market, the Egyptian market, it will definitely reduce the total cost of ownership of electric vehicles. And the last point is say that this intersection point, this point here, represent the amount of electric vehicles that take over instead of gasoline. But this will not happen until we have the sufficient number of charging stations. So the market share actually is well governed by how many charging stations that we have that actually will satisfy the market share that we are looking for, which is the percentage of the market that is converted to electric vehicles. So our model is the scope, as we mentioned. We calculate the total cost of ownership for electric vehicles and buses and EVs, and we calculate the required number of charging stations that's required for saturation. And from here, we have our models subdivided into submodels, one for calculation of TCO, one for doing techno-economic study for charging stations, And the third part is just an assessment of energy and environmental impact of that. We have two scenarios: the business as usual scenario that we call base scenario, that is the current situation of the market and the policies. And we have what we shooting for is proactive scenario that will help and push the conversion to electric vehicles. The output of the model will be the TCO values for the saturation, the market penetration, and the required charging units to achieve the market share that we're looking for, and the results we displayed later. The first thing that we did is we constructed a big database of electric vehicles from all classes. This database of electric vehicles have been developed, including technical performance, prices, everything corresponding to internal combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles. This market share, this database that we used to develop our model is made from different sources, basically from the EMIC report, because we got the technical and financial information of the cars of the Egyptian market from EMIC report, Automotive Market Information Council report 2020, that have all these classes of cars. And we started by the classes already in the Egyptian market, and we looked for the equivalent cars from the EV market, for the equivalent EV markets that have the same capacity, so that we can replace the existing car with the equivalent car from the EV fleet. We dealt also with the taxi, and we also with the 5 categories of the passenger cars. We have Class A, Class B, Class C, SUV, and SUV-C. These are classified according to capacity. And as I mentioned, this is the internal combustion engine vehicles, and this is the battery electric vehicles, and this is taxi, and the Nasr A70 is included. So the base scenario that we have is we have some parameters like the fixed parameters that we didn't vary, and we have some variable parameters that change with distance. This is the business as usual scenario, and this is the proactive scenario. So the base scenario, we have the license fee as of today, we didn't change it, and for the battery vehicles, the license fee is 25% lower, and the resale value is like this, and the registration cost as of today, and this is the business as usual scenario, and 50% of internal combustion engine vehicles, that's registration. The custom fees is already, electric vehicle is already exempted from custom fees. The initial purchase price of electric vehicles is constant over the 10 years that we took the study from 2021 to 2030. But the electric vehicle price is annually decreasing with 5% from its today's price due to the improvement in technology and the scale of production. We have the maintenance cost also increasing with time, with slightly increasing. The energy prices for gasoline is increasing 5% from the current gasoline price. For electric vehicles, we have the electric price fixed up to 2050, and after that year until 2030, the price increases by 3%. The market share the market size is increasing 10% per year, around 200,000 cars at 2020 by EMIC. And we have the retired car, 50% of the newly added cars. The charging units, as announced by the ministry, the cabinet of ministry, is they are planning to build 1,000 units per year. That's the business as usual scenario. The proactive scenario, we try to see what happened if we pushed these things above so that we can improve and fasten the transformation to EV vehicles. So when we keep the exemption of custom fees, we keep the exemption of the charging custom fees, we decrease the price of electric vehicles. We say if we decrease the price of electric vehicles to 7% instead of 5% of the business as usual scenario, that reflects the technology improvement and the scale of production, and also the intrusion of the A70 car in the market will gradually decrease the price. And also we included the carbon tax production, and we tried to increase the charging unit station to see what happened if we increase the charging unit station from instead of 2,000 with 1,000 units until 23, we tried to increase to 1,500 units until 27 and 2,000 units every year until 2030. That totals with 15,000 electric DC charging units. So these are glance of what happened in the scenarios. The sample results of the model will say that this is the market share, the annually newly added e-vehicles. They're going to be in 2030, it's going to be like 5 million electric cars will be added in the proactive scenario, and the base scenario will be like 250,000. And for the cumulative number of cars added EV vehicles from 2021 to 2030, we will reach like 2 million cars in the base, 1 million car in the base scenario, and 2 million cars in the proactive scenario. This is the cumulative from 2021 to 2030. And also this is showing the overall market share. These cars added, the 2 million cars or the 1 million car for the base scenario, represent like 16.5% of the total market. And in the proactive scenario, the 2 million cars added cumulatively from 2021 to 2030 will represent 31.5% from the total market size. And this results in a very good agreement with the IEA strategy announced by the World Bank, and actually they give also very similar results. So for the taxi results, we may have cumulatively 250,000 in the proactive scenario and 185,000 cars in the proactive scenario, in the base scenario from 2001 to 2021 until 2030. And here you can see the total cost of ownership reducing for electric vehicles over the years. And for the conventional car, the total cost of ownership increases with time, with years, due to the policies that followed on the business as usual scenario and the proactive scenario. Here is the overall market share for the taxi. We see that the overall market share, the cumulative, is 37% in the base scenario and 45% in the proactive scenario. And we can notice that the taxi conversion to electric vehicles is more attractive and achieves more penetration in the market because the annual mileage is higher for the electric taxis, and also the specific fuel consumption is high because the driving cycle is very bad, the low efficiency, because the car is 50% of the time is stopped in traffic using fuel without producing any useful range. So the conversion to electric vehicle will be very efficient because electric vehicles are efficient inherently, and during the stop times, it will not consume any energy. This is why the taxi conversion seems to be more attractive. So for the gasoline consumption, accumulative from 2001 to from 2021 to 2030, we found that there is saving 4.7 million ton, which is equivalent to 4.9 million ton of oil equivalent during the year from 2004, during the 10 years of study in the proactive scenario. And the amount of energy used in the electric vehicles in the proactive scenario cumulatively in the 10 years will be 8 terawatt hours in the proactive scenario, which is equivalent to 1.5 million ton of oil equivalent according to the energy mix at 2030. So we can say that we have saving of 4.9 million ton of oil equivalent from gasoline, and we only consume 1.5 million ton of oil equivalent electricity. So the saving in energy saving is 3.4 million ton of oil equivalent. So it's an energy saving. So we need to emphasize that conversion from gasoline to electric car is not just a fuel switching, like from gasoline to natural gas. It's also inherently an energy saving process because the electric car itself is more efficient because it's more efficient than the diesel engine or the gasoline engine. So the 3.4 million ton of oil equivalent energy saving is due to the inherent efficiency of electric vehicle itself. Also, the 8 terawatt hour that is consumed for powering the electric vehicles in the market is not going to be a problem for the electricity sector because we saw the huge capacity that we already have in the network, but it may be a challenge only for distribution company. This is why we need some kind of smart charging and optimization, and also open the door for what we call vehicle to grid, as we spoke before. Regarding the emission, from we have that's the base scenario, and that's the cumulative scenario, the proactive scenario. Through these 10 years of study, we have 6 million tons of oil equivalent, CO2 equivalent saved due to the conversion of passenger car and taxis in the base scenario. And if this followed the proactive scenario with these policies that emphasize and help the EV, we may reach to 14.3 million tons of CO2 equivalent saved, net saved during the conversion. The last slide I'm going to talk about in the results will be about the model for the charging units, because that's a key factor for the diffusion of e-vehicles. As we mentioned, that the psychological behavior of customers will not be convinced, they are not be convinced to buy electric vehicles unless you satisfy the charging station and the infrastructure for them. So we developed a sub-model calculating the techno-economic points of the charging station. We used the official charging costs that as announced by the Cabinet of Ministers on July 14, 2021, as these are the prices for the slow charging, 22 kilowatt, it's going to be 1.8 Egyptian pounds. For the DC fast charging at 50 kilowatt will be 3.7 Egyptian pounds. And also, we included the price of the charging station permits, which is 5,000 Egyptian pounds for the persons who are interested in building this charging station. Following the model and these prices, the model suggests that charging station is a good business opportunity for entrepreneurs, with a payback period for around from 1 to 2 years, with interest rate with the IRR for around 14%. So actually, it's not being a burden, it's a good opportunity for investors to work in that field. Also, our model suggests that charging station accumulated infrastructure capex needed for the 10 years of study will be 8 Egyptian pounds for the base scenario and 12.5 billion Egyptian pounds in the proactive scenario. Here, I'm going to end with the actions that we should.
In 1 minute, please.
Okay. So the message to stakeholders, the government and the financial institution and the companies, electricity company, we need to bridge the gap in the TCO and help EVs to take over by restricting licensing for old cars and by restricting the access to some specific areas to low emission cars. This will help overtake of electric vehicles, impose tax and carbon taxes on large gasoline consuming cars that will push customers to use the electric vehicles. For the EV side, we enable the soft finance and pursue the new electricity cars. We support local manufacturing of assembly of electric cars like what did we in Nasr E70 that will reduce the price. And also we make any taxi license for EVs only. We support the installation of charging units. We have some incentive prices necessary. We ease the permitting procedure. This will definitely increase the charging station and business. And finally, the conversion to EVs is not only a fuel switching, as we mentioned, it's also an energy efficiency process that saves like 3.4 million tons oil equivalent in the proactive scenario from our study. And also the environmental impact is huge. We have 14.3 million tons CO2 equivalent saved and 4.7 million tons of gasoline saved, which is equivalent to $3.5 billion that will increase the income. The 8 terawatt hours consumed in the proactive scenario is not a challenge for the vehicle, for the electricity grid, but it may be for the distribution companies. This is why we suggest the smart charging optimization. The environmental effect is very clear due to the switching of electric vehicles. Finally, the model, what we have result from the model in both scenarios are very realistic and achievable. We compare the results with the results of the IEE strategy that is supported for Egypt. And actually there was a very good agreement because the IEE strategy supported 2 scenarios, the high scenario with 30% of all cars from e-vehicles, and the medium scenario 16% was very close to our results. We got 31% and 16.5%. In addition, the EU also targets around 2 million electric vehicles by 2030. Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting me during this presentation. Sorry for being late.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reda, for very informative presentation. As you mentioned that If we go with a proactive scenario, Egypt will going to have by 2030 2 million cars, electric cars running, which is very good target compared to the European target for 30 million cars for the whole continent. I believe let's work for that. It's a challenging, but for sure, yani, it could be done. Specifically, as you noted, that the demand for electricity will be around 8 million or 8 terawatt hour, which is very well affordable. It will not more than 2 to 3% of the generation at that time. Yes, maybe some challenges on the distribution level, but for sure the target could be achieved. Now we go for our fourth speaker is Dr. Rami Shaltut, assistant professor at the German University in Cairo. He will speak to us a paradigm shift now, new rapid electric trains projects in Egypt and their impact on improving mobility and environment. Dr. Shaltut is a railways engineering system expert. Currently, he is holding the position of assistant professor at the German University in Cairo. Dr. Shaltut graduated as a mechanical engineering department at Gazi University. He got his master's degree as well as his PhD degree from the mechanical engineering department of the Polytechnic University Valencia, Spain. In the period from 2014 to 2016, he worked as a research associate in New Rail Center of Railways Research, Newcastle University in United Kingdom. Dr. Shaltut has participated in many European-funded research projects, which have a strong impact on his research and academic career. Dr. Shaltut, the floor is yours, and I appreciate very much if you restrict yourself to 15 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Professor Hafiz, for your invitation. Thank you for your words and the introduction. I will be very brief in the presentation. I will share with you my screen now. I hope you can see it. Yeah.
Yes.
So my presentation will be on the new rapid electric trains projects in Egypt and its impact on improving mobility and the environment. So my presentation will be summarized in the following points. I will briefly introduce the concept of sustainability in the rail sector. And also we will go through how green are the electrified trains. Then we will talk about the electrified rail transport in Egypt. So we will have an overview of the current projects and the future plans for electrified trains in Egypt. And finally, we will talk about the impact of improving mobility service using the electrified trains in Egypt. So first of all, as an introduction, the sustainable development is always considered one of the main global challenges facing the world today, and it's an important aspect for developing the transportation sector. As trains or the railways considered to be the backbone of the transportation system in any country, it is considered as the fastest and the most efficient way of decarbonize people's daily mobility and the logistics chain. It's also in terms of energy per capita or globally, railways and public transport are extremely efficient, as passenger rail transport require only 1/10 of the energy needed to move an individual. If we look at the global or the international actions towards the sustainability of the rail sector, we will here introduce an example followed by the EU Commission of establishing a new umbrella under the program Shift to Rail. This umbrella of Shift to Rail is a very big European project containing or gathering all infrastructure managers and rolling stocks manufacturers, train operators, and as well as academia and research institutes working on the rail sector with 5 innovative programs to enhance and to promote the shift of the passenger and the logistics, as well as the freight logistics to the rail sector. One
Dr.
of the main...
Dr. Rami, I appreciate if you put the presentation on presentation mode to give much wider screen.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the main key parameters or the cross-cutting themes through all these innovative programs is the energy and sustainability. So all these programs or the innovative programs followed up by Shift to Rail has to be in accordance with the energy and sustainability plans adopted by the EU and adopted by all the partners followed in the Shift to Rail program. So if we talk about the sustainability concept in the rail sector, I will be using the definition adopted by the Rail Safety and Standard Board in the UK for defining the principles of sustainability in the rail sector. The sustainability in the rail sector are mainly based on 3 pillars. These 3 pillars are the environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. So if we are targeting environmental sustainability, we will be looking at reducing the energy consumption and reducing, of course, the amount of noises generated by the rail sector. If we are looking to the social sustainability, we are looking for improving safety, increased reliability and availability. If we are looking at the economic sustainability, we will have to reduce the amount of money paid or the amount of money paid for the energy consumption and the reduction in the track maintenance cost, as well as the overall reduction in the life cycle cost of the trains. So this sort of sustainability also is very important for the International Union of Railways, UIC. GUC is now working with UIC under the University Alliance for High Speed. And one of the main activities followed up by the International Union of Railways, UIC, is the sustainability, including air quality, energy efficiency and CO2 emissions, noise and vibration, sustainable land use, and circular economy. They followed these themes or the definitions of these topics based on that the definitions that 8% of the global passenger and the freight transport activity only represented by the rail sector, while rail is only presenting 2% of the transport sector emissions. So according to these activities, UIC have been working on big projects for improving or developing a tool which you can all invited to use. It's an online tool, which is Eco Passenger. Eco Passenger, you can define your destination, your origin and the destination, and it will automatically generate or calculate for you the amount of carbon dioxide, energy resources, and the energy resources consumption, particular matter, nitrogen oxides, and to compare different types of transport modes. For this example, I am showing you, this is an example showing a comparison for a trip from the origin, or the origin of the trip is London station, and the destination is Paris. So these are the amount in kilograms of carbon dioxide generated while using the trains and cars and airplanes. They also worked on calculating is the same for freight. So they worked on a project called Eco Transit. So you can define exactly where your origin and the destination and the amount of tonnage that you are transferring using this sort of transport modes. So you can always select the trucks or trains, airplanes, ships, or whatever transport mode you would like to compare with, and the program will automatically create for you or calculate for you the amount of energy consumed in megajoules or in kilowatt hours or diesel equivalent as well. So in short, we can present an example here for the amount of carbon or the emissions generated by the rail sector. For example, the high-speed rail in comparison with the airplane. So you have a huge saving in the emissions or the CO2 emissions generated by the trains in comparison with any other buses for 1 kilometer per passenger. So Egypt has passed or has done very good effort in regarding the electrified rail transport, and thanks to the vision of His Excellency President of Egypt and all the efforts followed by the Minister of Transport for establishing new projects for electrified trains. We started initially with Cairo Metro electrified trains. We have 3 lines in operation. These 3 lines in operation and 1 under construction, which is the 4th line. The first line is El Marg Helwan. Marg Helwan 44 kilometer line with 80 kilometer per hour as an average speed. 58 trains as a train fleet with daily trips of 480 trips per day, and number of stations 35 stations. We have the second line, operating line. It's Shobran Weeb line, which is 21.6 kilometer. The average speed is as well as the first line is 80 kilometer per hour. We have a fleet of 39 trains with an average daily trips of 664, and the number of stations on that line is 20 stations. For the third line, which is recently opened and the last phase was delivered successfully, the average speed is 80 kilometers per hour with a total length of 23 kilometers. It's Al-Ataba Adli Mansour. Adli Mansour is interchange or transportation hub, which will be used for different mobility sectors in Egypt, including buses, taxis, and different types of electrified trains will pass by this interchange station. The 4th line, we have the first phase is Hadai al-Ashgar al-Fustat, which is about 19 kilometers, and it is already planned, and the work or the contract has been signed with Orascom and Arab contractors as well to start building of 17 stations. If we look at the other new project, which is a monorail has 2 phases. The first one connecting new administrative city with East Cairo with total length of 56.5 kilometers, and the new rail has a second phase, which is 42 kilometers connecting Giza with 6th of October, with an average of 45,000 passengers an hour in each direction. Currently, we have 22 stations on that line with a construction rate of 21.2% until July 2021. So the first phase will be commissioning by May, hopefully by May 22, and the second phase will be starting on 2030. The other electrified train project, which is very important to connecting the outside neighborhoods with Great Cairo region, we have the LRT or Light Rail Transit project, El Salam, a new administrative city, Al-Ashir min Ramadan. So you have 16 stations in total on that line, total length of 90 kilometers with a maximum speed 120 kilometers per hour. It's an average daily passenger hour in each direction is almost 30,000, which it's a huge amount of passenger, and its capacity on that line will be also very high, as it connects this new hubs or industrial hubs like the Al and Ramadan with New Cairo. So you have great mobility of the workers working in that areas. Also Badr city and the new administrative, of course, will be traveling or commuting from Egypt, from Great Cairo to the new administrative capital. If we are looking at the total network of Egypt, is approximately 9,570 kilometers in total. So most of them is a single track, which none of them is electrified. But the new vision is to establish new new high-speed lines connecting different points all over Egypt. So we started by Al Alamein and Sofna high-speed line, which is a 460 kilometer line. Egypt already started this with Siemens Mobility. They started establishing the new line connecting Al Alamein with Al Sofna. It's a mixed traffic. That means that it will use passenger as well as freight transportation with maximum speed of design speed of 250 kilometers per hour for the passenger. That means that the operating speed should be around 200 to 220 kilometers per hour for the passengers. And for the electrified freight trains, the speed will be almost 90 kilometers per hour. However, it will be another intercity train or medium speed train running with a speed of 160 kilometers per hour on that line. It has a total number of stations of 15 stations with an average or a total cost of $3 billion for the civil work and other $3.1 billion for the electromechanical work and the train sets or the rolling stock that will be running on that line. If we are looking at the future plans for establishing or electrified trains for Egypt, we have a plan until 2050 with 4 phases connecting or establishing 1,000 kilometers, connecting Alexandria to Aswan. So these phases is to establish a new high-speed line parallel to the existing network, and it will be totally separate network for the high-speed lines with 4 design phases. The first phase will connect Alexandria to Giza. It's a 220 kilometer phase, and the second phase is connecting Giza to Asyut, 400 kilometers. Third phase is connecting Asyut to Luxor to 50 kilometers, and the fourth phase will be Luxor to Aswan. If we summarize all the projects or the high-speed network in Egypt, so in the first phase, we have 5 main lines, Al Alamein, Sofna, 6 October, Luxor, and we added also another plan for establishing Hurghada Luxor, which is 285 kilometers. Luxor Aswan, of course, and Al Alamein Marsa Matruh, it's another 200 kilometers, which was added to the 460 kilometers in the first phase of the high-speed network. Future plans connecting Sofna Hurghada with 320 kilometers, Safaga Barnis with 350 kilometers. All this network is the network of 1,000 kilometers I presented for the 4 phases connecting Alexandria to Aswan is compatible and in accordance with Africa Integrated High-Speed Rail Network, which was adopted in 2013 in Lagos. They adopted an agenda to connect the capitals or the African capitals with 4 lateral or horizontal lines of a high-speed network and 4 longitudinal 4 longitudinal and 6 latitudinal lines. Our line here is is compatible or in accordance with this plan. The main objectives of this is interconnect the landlocked countries or the African countries, connect different regions of Africa, and connect African capital economic hubs with the main object of establishing a free trade area in Africa. This agenda is adopted until 2063. So we are in the first phase. So in total we have 55 countries participating in this plan with 12,000 kilometers in high speed. So hopefully this plan will connect the African continent. So, and finally, what is the impact on improving our mobility service? Obviously, establishing new electrified trains like the high-speed trains will create more jobs and increase economic activity. It will also reduce congestion and boosting the productivity. It also will expand the travel choices and improve the mobility. Here we have an example for connecting high-speed line in comparison with taxi and airplane, connecting Los Angeles with San Francisco. So you have in total, you have here the number of hours spent using the high speed in comparison with the auto or the airplane, which is considered the very effective way of transporting people using this sort of transport. All customers for passenger or freight are eager to have necessities, or they already have requirements, and the impact on this sector for the passenger and the freight is huge. For passengers, of course, you are expected to have a better service frequency and the speed. You have a better punctuality, and the journey quality will be enhanced, as well as passenger comfort. The value of money will be enhanced as well, and the connectivity with other modes will be established using this sort of trains and sustainable trains. For the freight, you will have a cost-effective connections. You have enhanced the speed, you will have better distances, and you of course will have to establish this sort of logistic hubs where the trucks can only move in the last mile instead of cutting long distances using and consuming better higher amounts of energy. And you will also have this sort of flexibility in transporting different types of goods and the freights using the rail sector. So that was all for my presentation, and I would like to thank you and wish you a very effective and fruitful discussion. Thank you, Professor. So muted. I think Dr. Hafiz, you are muted.
Okay, thank you. I'm back again now. I would say that thank you very much, Dr. Rami, for very informative presentation, and how it looks that fast-speed train. It looks like a paradigm shift in the railways sector in Egypt, which is a very old sector in Egypt. And you showed to us that Egypt could also, we usually speak about Egypt as an energy hub, but also Egypt has a very good opportunity to be also a transportation hub, as you showed from the African interconnection plan. But still it's raised question, what about old existing lines? Is that could be electrified also, or we just focus on fast speed trains to be electrified? I will post this to the Q&A session, but let me move to our speaker, Mr. Neil Valentine, Head of Urban Mobility Sector Division, Cleaner Transport Facility, European Investment Bank. He will talk to us about EIB, European Investment Bank, support to sustainable mobility for Egypt. Mr. Neil is the head of the division responsible for urban mobility sector within the projects directorate at the EIB, European Investment Bank. He also leads the bank cleaner transport facility. Mr. Neil is a transport sector specialist with a wide experience in the sector. He started his career in technical consultancy, working both in the UK and internationally on a range of infrastructure projects. This was followed by a role for a major management consultant providing advice to major infrastructure clients on project development, management, and financing. Mr. Neil joined the bank as a technical advisor in 2003, working on transport sector projects with a focus on public-private partnership projects. He moved to the lending department in 2007, where he managed a number of EIB relationships with transport infrastructure providers in the Western European region. He returned to the sector-based role in the projects directorate in 2012. Mr. Valentine, this floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Professor Hafez. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to do a few things actually today with you. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the European Investment Bank to you, for those of you who don't know who we are and what we do. I'd like to explain to you a little bit about what we're doing in Egypt. And then I'd like to give you a perspective of the transition that we're seeing in Europe to cleaner transport technologies. So I think, having listened carefully to the things that you've been talking about, I think I will find some eager participants in the audience. But let me see if I can make the technology work. So hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yes, we see your
Is it
screen.
moving?
Yes, we see your screen.
You can see my screen.
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. So let me just move on. So the European Investment Bank is a public bank. It's owned by the countries of the European Union. And we're one of the original institutions that was set up back in the 1950s. And we've been active supporting infrastructure, and transport has always been a big part of that. We operate both in the EU. The EU is our primary area of operation, but we have a long track record of supporting the EU's development efforts, particularly in what we term the neighborhoods, the southern neighborhood being North Africa, and the eastern neighborhoods being the peripheral regions of Europe, which were formerly part of the Soviet Union and are now predominantly independent countries. So as you can see, we're big, over 60 billion euros a year, and about 10 billion of that in the outside of the EU. And the southern neighbors take about 3.5 billion, and of that, Egypt takes quite a significant share. So let's keep going. Drive the, there we go. So what kind of things are we doing? So increasingly our shareholders, the governments, want us to support the transition to sustainable everything. Primarily climate. Climate has become the big focus, but sustainability is behind everything. So ultimately, climate and low emissions is part of the sustainable agenda. So we are looking for lending opportunities to support those policies. And we do that in a range of sectors. I heard an interesting discussion about energy earlier in the webinar. That's one of the areas we're involved with, renewables, energy efficiency, but we're also interested in innovation and new technologies. And I heard a little bit of discussion about that. And we're interested in low emission mobility. That's my area of expertise, is urban mobility and the introduction of lower emission solutions. So we're doing about 8 billion a year in urban mobility. I mean, that's really quite significant. I mean, that's a lot of metros, it's a lot of buses, and indeed some of that happens in Egypt. So my slide does, here we go. So over the last, 20 years, you can see that we've supported a lot of sustainable transport. Of the 140 billion euros that we've invested in the transport sector, some half of it has been in rail and urban mobility. So I mean, that's over 20 years, that's 70 billion euros. So that's a pretty considerable support to the transport sector. In Egypt, we've been very active with Cairo Metro, and many of you will know us from there. We've also started working in Alexandria. Again, this is with NAT. And I'm pleased to say that we've started work with the rail company on a railway upgrading. So you can see that sustainable transport is very much at the heart of what we do in Egypt. So in terms of the sort of the transition overall, I mean, we've heard today about many of the dimensions, but I mean, I think from our perspective as an investor, if you like, we're interested in seeing a number of things happening. I mean, firstly, is we like to see, a well-conceived planning context, national strategies, city strategies, so that there's a coherent approach. And I think, a number of the dimensions that we would expect have been discussed already here today. I mean, clearly, you've got to introduce low emission vehicles, zero emission preferably. And when I say zero emission, I talk about zero emission at the tailpipe, so that they're clean on the ground, as opposed to necessarily being fully clean from a carbon perspective, truly zero emission. And that falls back onto the source of the electricity being used for the vehicle. But as you saw, with the increase in renewables, and Egypt is no exception here, you can achieve very rapid decarbonization by using electricity, and that's ultimately one of the things that we see is that electrification is a key in the transport sector. There's been discussion today, of course, about electric vehicle charging, and that is key. And there's a question for the government about how much is left to the private sector and how much is done by the government. And that's a matter of policy, and it's something that many countries have been discussing. Nobody has a perfect answer yet. Europe has been trying quite hard. The European Commission has a big program to support the implementation now of alternative fuel facilities. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years in Europe, you're going to see an explosion of recharging infrastructure. And then the other sort of two dimensions that we look for very much are the implementation of good public transport schemes, electrified preferably, and then clearly the soft modes, as we talk about, the cycling and the provisions for pedestrians. And ultimately, it's about an integrated approach with multimodality so that people have choices about the journeys they make, and we don't force them into cars, particularly in urban areas. I mean, Cairo is famous for its traffic jams, unfortunately for its air pollution. One of the big advantages of electrification is that you reduce the pollution in your urban areas significantly. And I mean, I think this is one of the things that has got a little bit forgotten in the discussion about zero emission and climate, where the focus is very much on greenhouse gas. Actually, the health benefits of this transition are really very significant. And I think, you know, as human beings, we can all welcome that. So in the introduction, Professor Hafez mentioned the Cleaner Transport Facility. So this is really an initiative, well, it was a joint initiative with the European Commission that I set up in 2015, 2016. And it was when the European authorities were starting to take, for want of a better expression, baby steps. They were all asking themselves, how were they going to do this? What was a hydrogen bus? What was an electric bus? What was a, you know, why should they go battery electric? Was it reliable? And what we saw was that there were an awful lot of questions, and there were a lot of authorities and operators buying 2, 3, 4 buses, trying them out, not entirely sure how to move forward. So what we did was we basically engaged, and through the Commission and the bank, we engaged with the promoter community, and we supported them with advisory. We supported them with loans and some risk-taking instruments, so to help them bear some of the risks that they would otherwise not have been willing to bear. I mean, this is all using public money, of course, to provide that risk capital. And what we saw was that over a number of years, we moved from this situation of people trying 2, 3, 4 buses to buying 15, 20 buses as an initial tranche of their bus replacement program. And then we started to see cities starting to think about completely buying electric for their bus replacement. So in their annual purchases, they were no longer foreseeing a mix of diesel, CNG, and electric. They were going exclusively to battery electric. So I think what we've seen in Europe is really a ramp up in public authorities in their confidence in moving into zero emission vehicles for buses. We're obviously keen to support electrification in other public fleets, and we support a lot of electric vehicle charging as well. And we have a healthy dialogue with the freight industry, but I think the solutions in freight are emerging, and certainly in city logistics, we see that the light vehicles up to sort of 3.5 tons, there's quite good perspective for electrification, but for the interurban longer distance, it's more complicated. And then, of course, there's a big discussion about should that be hydrogen? Should we be relying on CNG? Should we find battery electric solutions? And I think ultimately the market will find its own level on this. So if I think about the transition that's underway, I mean, one of the things I've been talking about is the carbon footprint, and you can see that in the EU certainly renewables is now overtaking fossil fuel use in energy production, which means we're getting steady improvement in the carbon footprint of electrified transport. And I think this is one of the key considerations. You know, is this mix? Then the other thing again that's been discussed quite extensively this morning is the uptake of electric vehicles. And you can see that in the EU, the electric vehicle sales have started to take off. Now, I mean, I have to say that they've gone from tiny, tiny numbers to modest numbers. The growth has been spectacular, but there's a lot more to do. And you know, I think we're going to see again over the next 5 to 10 years the percentage of electric vehicles being sold increase year on year, which of course comes back to the need for decent access to electric vehicle charging. So I wanted to pause and think a little bit about buses. I mean, I've talked about buses quite a lot. I mean, not every city can have a metro. Not every city can have trams. Most cities have buses. So buses are one of the places that we can make a difference, where by supporting authorities, supporting operators, buses, you can get both the environmental benefits I was talking about and the carbon reduction everybody wants. So I think it's important to say that the way you set this up has quite an impact on the solutions that operators adopt. And one of the things that a lot of the operators complain about is the fact, of course, that the electric buses at the moment are more expensive than the diesel equivalents. So they say, well, the upfront cost is one of the colleagues on the question of the cost of ownership and the fact that the electric vehicles are cheaper and they're more efficient and they run on electricity. Now, you can think to cost of ownership in the price of pounds per mile, cents per kilometre, then you then just from passing the different technologies. So I think this is a really important aspect. Another aspect is to have for operators so that they take the banking community and for the vehicle. So I to go into too much detail because it gets quite technical. Institutions technical quite quickly, and really need to have discussion in terms of. I think this is a really important thing for the adoption of electric buses. So I give you a couple of quick examples. Please
connection.
Just other things that have been with here is one of the big Europe with 230
and we have, it seems, not a good internet. Yes. Yeah, please proceed. I hope the internet service will.
Okay. Bandwidth issues. So
I think this is almost the last slide. Thank you very much, Mr. Neil. Unfortunately, the last part of the presentation, very valuable presentation, was interrupted with the internet. But sure, Mr. Neil raised a very important point, which is basically which. which cars will be converted to natural gas, which car will be electrified, which go for hydrogen. And he mentions that we are very much need for a comprehensive and coherent approach or strategic approach to go for our strategy. And this is very much important for Egypt also. Last but not least, for sure, our speaker, Mr. John Harris, International Education Strategy and Business Development Lead. He will speak to us on travel demand management. Mr. John has been working for Chartered Institute for Logistics, Transport, CILT, for the last 9 years, and currently leads on international education strategy and business development. Mr. John is a chartered town and transport planner and has over 30 years of experience in sustainable and green transport. He has an instrumental in the development of CILT education, training, and skills programs and partnership working, and is responsible for delivering collaborative projects across the world. Also, he is a transport planner, and since 1989, his career has covered planning, accessibility, inclusion, sustainable transport, freight logistics, and public transport planning. He has specialized in travel behavior change with highlights, including advising on the London 2020 Games, advising the UK government on freight delivery matters, and working on a number of sustainable urban mobility and rail projects. Mr. Johns is a qualified business coach and director of the Community Rail Partnership in the UK. Mr. Harris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor. I am going to be very brief because really I want to bring the story to a natural close now by talking about a really key issue, which is the human aspects. Whether we're talking about the development of bus solutions, rail solutions, electric cars, which we've heard about today in a lot of really good detail. Ultimately, travel demand management comes down heavily to personal choice and how businesses and individuals will adapt their behavior. So I'm going to draw on some international examples, but also ask you some challenging questions to do with the Egyptian sustainable travel scene. Just in case anyone isn't aware, CILT is a global body. We operate across over 50 countries across the world. And as a professional institute, we cover supply chain logistics and transport planning. You can see from the little map there where we actually operate. So you'll see that we're present in all 5 continents across the world. What is also important is that we try and tailor our messaging and our support to the local culture and the local economic situation. We have a CILT Egypt branch that is very committed to developing training and education, but also having a policy voice as well. And you can see clearly where the growth is occurring within our membership. Now, getting straight down to the point around sustainable transport, within CILT, we have a number of sectors that you can see there on the screen. The active travel, so that's walking and cycling, and the travel planning group is the one that's really now expanded to take on board this issue of travel demand management, which of course spans business travel, commuting, personal travel, and freight. So we are now no longer looking at the traditional issue of commuter behavior, but basically 24/7 behavior and how people choose to do that. Now, what's really important here from a sustainable mobility viewpoint is around the global picture. So CILT has been very active in looking at sustainability. If any of you are interested in our positions on this globally, go and have a look on our YouTube channel, and you will see a lot of webinars and helpful information dealing with e-mobility, low carbon transport and travel choice. Now, if you ask my professional view about, well, what's actually going on at the moment, I think there are four big forces that in any future project we've got to be very conscious of. The first one is the immediate COVID-19 impact and how that has changed the way people think about working, the way they think about traveling and their mode of travel. Certainly in the UK, we have seen a bit of a tidal wave back to use of the private car. And, you know, something like 48 million spare seats are on our roads every single morning because people are traveling on their own. The COVID impact has actually damaged, to some degree, the public transport perception, even though they are probably some of the most cleanest and safest places to be right now. There's also the whole issue of technology, and is technology good for its own sake, or does technology actually have to service a social need? There's a key question there. There's a question around process. So does that mean that transport operators and providers have to re-engineer the way that they deliver and think through things? And ultimately, going back to behavior change, you'll see there a picture of a subway train in the UK with one person sat on there in a mask. I mean, we are beginning to see leisure travel recovering, but in terms of utility travel, there's still a long, long way to go. So you can't underestimate the power of human choice. And I'm just going to focus on a couple of thoughts around that before we finish the presentations. So a couple of examples here about smart management. Again, it's around the willingness of the business sector and people to make changes. In the UK, we've always had a struggle with deliveries and people wanting to have their deliveries when it's convenient to them. So for many businesses, we've been restricted to delivery windows of between 8 AM and 6 PM in the evening. The utilization of the shoulders of the day, so timing from sort of 5 o'clock onwards and then on to 10 o'clock at night, historically has not been utilized properly in terms of smart freight. DFT, our government department responsible for transport, commissioned some work that I was involved in writing, which is the Quiet Deliveries Guidelines. And it looks at issues from a customer viewpoint, from a retailer, from a freight operator, and from a government municipality viewpoint, and looking at how you can actually use the space in a more creative way. This is all around creative retiming, and this is something that's a legacy from the London 2012 Games. There's also the importance of having good planning. So we know that there's a strong approach to this in Egypt, which is fantastic, around your sustainable mobility planning. Making sure that freight is in there in a balanced way alongside passenger movement is a really important issue. And in the Philippines, the National Urban Mobility Plan actually focused on the important issue of skills and capacity building and professionalism, and made recommendations that the Institute should work closely with the delivery agencies for that plan. Now, we've heard a lot about rail today, but I just want to pick up some of the challenges that we have in this country, where actually the returning to rail is becoming quite a challenge. If you look at the diagram in the bottom left of your screen, this is what we call the travel demand management continuum, or put very simply, it's a stepping stone process to bring people that are very rigid in their travel behavior and their attitudes to a mode of travel to becoming much more regular and committed to doing something differently. Now, if you think about Cairo, you'll have in your population individuals that will be non-changers. So they will drive and they will follow that lifestyle pattern almost 100% whatever you do. There will be those that are committed to sustainable travel behaviors, even if they only do it once or twice a week. The key issue is this zone in the middle. So with all the investment that's being considered around electric mobility, etc., the key issue is how you're going to draw those unconvinced, those unthinkers, those people that have never tested to actually try out and actually move up that continuum. This model is tried and tested. It's been used for organizational travel demand management strategies, for citywide travel demand management strategies, and also for national ones as well. The challenge is knowing the audience. And one of the things I would surmise is that with the impact of COVID, the balance in London, in Glasgow, or in Cairo will have shifted. And the number of people that now perceive themselves as non-changers, they may have retracted into their cars, and the number of people committed may have diminished. And one of the key things is to understand what the starting position is before you launch into any campaign around electric vehicles or electric bicycles or anything like that, is to understand the bedrock on which it's based. Now, there is also a very important angle here, which is social, and it's to do with making sure that any intelligent improvements to the transport system do actually lead to travel behavior change and support the individual. So in the UK, you can see on the screen here, someone there looking at conventionally, they're sitting in a wheelchair, they're looking for information. There's a lot of work now going into digitalizing the railway. There are now pop-up sign language signs that are at some of the mainline terminals, and you can use, there's a clever system that means if there's disruption, they can actually feed the correct messaging that's bespoke for the day and the particular crisis that's happening, and they will have the sign language person digitally there with the messaging. It's a really good scheme. It's just been launched in Euston about 6 months ago. Now, the other thing to also reflect upon, and again, for Egypt, it will possibly be different, but to think about how the construction industry and the delivery sector are dealing with sustainable travel is important. So in the UK, we've gone through a journey where the planning process basically said you needed a plan to manage your deliveries or your construction traffic. After the Olympic Games, it became much more travel demand management. You see it there in the red. If we then move across to sort of 2015 onwards, we start to see it much more as part of integrated transport planning and part of mobility planning. And then finally, I think we're getting to this point where we've got to be very smart and scalable, particularly with a massive explosion in click and collect services. That evolution will be different for different cultures and for different cities. The important thing is that for an integrated approach, we really need to be over here in the holistic approach to make sure that the delivery, the construction traffic, whatever you're doing with smart technology, electric vans, deliveries, it's still going to work within your existing infrastructure. We've covered a lot of these points, so I won't go over it again, but digitalization is a critical area around making the assets actually work better. So even without technological advances in terms of vehicle technology, we can be a lot smarter and we can decarbonize by using digital techniques. What I would say is there does have to be a social and equity result of doing that. So what does that mean for everyone here around the table? Well, I'd like to suggest this. If Egypt is at the cusp of something really exciting here around mobility and around smart travel, whatever happens with infrastructure investment has got to be mirrored up with some form of people development. And what that means is making sure that the customers that you expect will jump to use these facilities or jump to invest or jump to purchase, they are actually going to be working within a travel demand management understanding and framework. So there's a balancing act about the human perception and the human decision-making against whatever infrastructure you are putting in. For Egypt, I guess there's some challenges. One is right now, right here, right now, what is the social kind of acceptability of travel demand management. Is that likely to have an easy ride? Is it going to be more difficult? Does the business sector share that same vision? Are they becoming, you know, the real advocates of smart mobility and some of these latest techniques because it makes business sense? Or is there any risk in their mindset around how things will pan out? One thing that's very important is that we need to look at this problem in terms of a mobility strategy, not as a transport strategy. If we look at it in a very modal way that says, here is our latest electric car, here is our latest electric van, and these are the things coming to the market, it really has to be looked at in terms of a mobility continuum and understanding what the people actually want. So I leave you with that thought, okay, for discussion, that is the model, is the glue that's bringing together everything you're trying to achieve here a people-centered model, or is it a technical model that you're trying to put in place? There's no right or wrong there, but I just put it out there that the people-centered models and the ones where the population understand very clearly what sustainable transport really means for them, they're the ones that are likely to have the long-term success. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully I kept to my 15 minutes, but that was food for thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Actually, it was very informative and looks like a paradigm shift from a technology to human behavior. And we usually fond of technology development, but you bring it back to what we should think in a way that our focus should be on a people. Actually, I like very much the word you mentioned about people-centered model or technology-centered model, because we usually, when we developed our new model, we usually think on technology approach, think on our previous experience regarding technological solutions, but sometimes we don't know exactly how people will react to this and how behavior changes could affect our plan changes. It's very much important. COVID-19 is a very good example. Working from home may reduce personal mobility, increase good mobility. And there is many changes taking place, and this should be very much part or an important component of any mobility strategy. And your focus point, which is mobility versus transport. We should talk about mobility more than just about transport. Transport is just a mean. Thank you, Mr. Harris, very much. I think it was too long to you. I just have one question because it has been repeated several times by many participants. Maybe I forward this question to Mr. Neil about the environmental impact of batteries, of electric cars. Is that being one of the dimensions being considered, and as these cars were expansion in cars, do we going to get out from an environmental problem to another environmental problem?
So, if I understand, you've asked me that question, Professor Hafez. How is my audio? Is it coming through okay?
Now it's okay.
Okay, much good. I'm sorry about the problems earlier. I have no idea what caused them. Listen, the environmental aspects are important, and clearly it's something that people are very worried about. I mean, I think a number of things. I think firstly is that batteries have a life cycle, and there will be second and third uses of batteries as they go through their life cycle. So there's a longer term perspective than just their first life use in a vehicle. Then I think there are recycling techniques being developed, but but it doesn't change the fact that there are, rare metals being used in batteries, which then need dealt with. And of course, there's the whole mining aspect, which is a completely different industry. But it's something that we obviously, as users, need to be aware of. I think the other thing that's happening is battery technology is advancing reasonably quickly, and the energy densities have improved immensely, and the types of elements being used are changing all the time. Now, this is not a specialist subject of mine, but I mean, I acknowledge the issue, but I think the issues are probably less than they are of the than they are with fossil fuels. So I mean, I think again, yes, we have to be conscious of this, and we have to put pressure on the manufacturers and indeed the battery suppliers. Now, governments around the world are piling in to battery production. So I mean, yes, it is on, as a financier, it is on my radar as being an issue. As a technician, I see that there are some solutions, and as somebody who's environmentally aware, I also see that there are problems that we have to solve and avoid. But like any solution, it comes with its risks. But I think it's a battery electric at the moment for light vehicles certainly is proving to be the most economically advantageous solution.
Thank you, Neil, actually, for this question. Actually, as you pointed, every solution comes with the challenges, and this is something renewable. We need to deal with every coming challenges, but the benefits come out from switching to electric vehicle, as Dr. Reda shows that it's not just fuel switching, it's an energy efficiency. Over 50% energy saved due to use electric vehicles, specifically in urban areas. We kept you too long today. Actually, I should finish by now. On that aspect, I would like to thank very much the contribution of His Excellency, Minister Hisham Tawfiq. Sure, my thanks goes to our very respectable speakers who provided us with very information in a very short time, but basically it was a wealth of information being offered. I would like to thank them very much for their contribution. For sure, thanks should go for our attendees who stayed for 3 hours, but I believe they got a very good opportunity to be exposed to very informative webinar. I would like to thank the project team, Marion, for sure, for her coordination, arrangement, communication activities, and looking forward to see you in our next webinar next month. Thank you very much, and looking forward to see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Hafs. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Shukran.
Bye-bye. Shukran.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.